I'm here to give you a brief understanding of where I come from. It's going to evaluate the way careers progress. And one of the beliefs I have is that a career doesn't really start, it only finishes. At the very beginning of your career, you're actually just working. You're developing your skills, working through to establish your career. Now, I came across this article about 10 years ago, and it recently popped up on Yahoo News, and I thought it was really interesting. I went back and looked. I've hired probably about 440 to 460 people over my career. And I would say that about 20% of them I probably shouldn't have hired. And this is some of the reasons why. Now, there was a letter that was written to the South Bend Tribune in 1959 by a juvenile judge. So he deals with a lot of kids, 16, 18-year-olds. And he wrote this letter, and some of the key points that came out of it. Your parents don't owe you entertainment. You know, this is your own business. Your city or village doesn't owe you a recreational facility. And this is all stuff that he heard when he was going on through, you know, these people that were brought in that, you know, believed that it was somebody else's fault, not their own. They needed somebody to set things up for them. The world doesn't owe you a living. You owe the world. You owe it your time, your energy, and your talents, right? And then this last one. This one is the one that the 20% that I probably shouldn't have hired probably fall under this. These are individuals that you hire. They typically complain a lot. They have this grandiose idea that on probably week 3 or 4 that they should either be running the company because they're that good. There's actually a lot of people out there like that. Now, career successes, skill development, continually build your skill set. There's a lot of opportunities out there to do that, and you'll see some of these opportunities. We have one that's offered through the Bio Network, and it provides courses essentially free of cost. If you're in a physical science program at SciTech or any college in the state of North Carolina for that matter, you talk with your instructor, and we'll set you up to take that course for free. These are courses in analytical training, they're courses in regulatory, and they're really good to have when you start out in your first job. Because if you can talk that talk, if you can understand what they're saying, and if those people who are interviewing you know that you know something, you're already on a good step forward. Now, the understanding of what and why. A lot of people go through motions of doing things, pushing buttons, because I know that this empties this container. The point of pushing that button and understanding why things are moving across things are very important. And as you learn those on your earlier jobs, it'll help you later on as you grow into some better jobs and open up for better opportunities. Application. You need to apply your knowledge not only from what you are currently do, but what you've learned before in the past. Initially, what you're going to do is you're going to draw off a lot of your education to be able to bring that academic component into your first job. But that first job, what you're going to have to do is actually take some of that and move it into your next job. Your first job will never typically be the only job you have. And also apply yourself. A lot of times people will go into work, they'll do what they're told to do, that's the end of it, and they go home. I'm not promoting workaholics, but I really do think that that first job you have is the point where you learn the most. Not only about the job or the tasks that you're doing, but how to work in that type of environment. Now, career takes time. You know, like I said earlier, you're not going to be the president after week 3 or week 4. But you can start to become a very good employee after week 3 or week 4. How you do things. Do you do them properly? Do you follow the procedures? Are you respectful? Not only of the people you report to, but the people you work with. Personal targets. Try to understand where you're going with things. You know, that first job, it's not going to be all about, you know, being a millionaire coming off of that first job. So set some targets. That first job that you have, again, it's learning. You're not going to stay there. Maintain interest in the job that you do. If you start losing interest in that job, there's no point in staying. It's going to be bad for you. It's going to be bad for the employer. And then flexibility. I mean, this goes back long. I mean, you never work by the clock, okay? If you have a project that needs to be done, if you need to complete something, get it to a safe point before moving on, do that. If it's 5 o'clock, 5:15, 6 o'clock, you're supposed to finish at 4:30, that'll go a long way. I was thinking about examples to use, right? I figured if I use my own example, I can't get after myself. So here's my example. Alan talked a bit about some of my credentials and stuff, which, you know, when you look around the room or if you look at, you know, people who work at SciTech, they're not terribly impressive, you know. Here's some of them. First apprentice ticket in auto mechanics. I was 14 years old, right? I noticed that when going to school, you could make probably $2 to $3.50 more an hour if you had an apprentice ticket, as opposed to just being a skilled hand, like just hand people working in industry. So I picked up a few extra tickets: electrical, HVAC, tinsmith, and carpentry. So it was easy for me to find a job during summer and holidays, right? My CDL license. Now, this was actually coupled with one of my jobs, but it allowed me to drive dump trucks, payloaders, and sawdust trucks for horse and equine places. I got my diploma in health sciences. This was a 2-year degree program, very similar to the community college system down here. It's in Canada, though. Bachelor of Science, major in chemistry. Engineering certificate, this was in material sciences, and it had to do with corrosion and fatigue and failure of metals, right? Industrial mechanics, this was actually associated with a position that I had that was in the engineering group, and for me to make the appropriate decisions, I had to understand what I was asking my people to do. So I took this course, I got a little certificate, I probably still have it somewhere. DNV Management and Safety Training. This is a Norwegian safety and management program, and that was offered to me free of charge. It's probably about a $4,000 or $5,000 program. The company I was working for thought it would be beneficial to have their senior managers take this. Some of them did, some of them didn't. I did. Now my work history, there's some funny stuff in here. I think there's only one job in here that I don't use today, right? First one, auto mechanic, kind of marries up with my previous one. Brewery operator, I still use that. Worked for Molson's in Montreal. Oil pipeline operator. There was a pipeline in Montreal for residential service, and I managed and worked with that. Now, lumberjack. Now, that's a really good Canadian job. This is where I use my CDL license. We would probably cut and clear, I think, about 120, 140 acres in the summer of a fairly heavily impacted treed area. New business development. Bench chemistry R&D. So it's probably my first job outside of college. Like, I graduated from college, and that's the first job I got. And if I remember correctly, I was paid like $2,000 under everybody else. And it was probably because I came from Quebec and I was working in Alberta. They didn't like Quebec people, right? I don't think they still do. But so I took the job. I learned a lot in that position. I learned, process chemistry. It's fundamental. If you're looking at this type of industry, process development is probably one of the key places to be. Build off of that on the regulatory side and you'll be in good shape. Small scale manufacturing. Now, this here is not only managerial, but it's also building the facilities. That had to do with my background. Quality assurance manager, engineering manager, production, project, process development. Now, this here, these are the tools that I'm using today. Currently, if I put down on paper what I'm doing today, I have 3 jobs. I'm a consultant, I work for the state of North Carolina, and I run a small analytical service, right? But it's based on what I've developed over the years. It took me 31 years to actually put that in place, right? So over those 31 years, I learned all these things to be able to put those in place and have them function properly. That's the current role for the state, an entrepreneur, right? Now, I'm going to get into a couple of pieces as to, I was hired here. Actually, Russ probably helped a little bit with bringing me down here. Russ and myself, we lived probably half an hour apart from each other, went to the same university, never met the man in my life before. I called down, talked to Sumerian. She was the Con Ed VP here. She put me in contact with Russ because she figured if I was Canadian, I probably knew him because he was Canadian. Small town. Yeah, small country. We didn't know each other, but it was interesting that we had those commonalities or backgrounds. He was developing a project at GlaxoSmithKline, I think on the marketing and development side, product called AZT. And I was out west in Alberta trying to develop an alternate route for it to circumvent their IP, which we did. So very, very interesting background there. All experience are valuable. I had an HR person once that would refer to a person's clay, and that was what made them up, right? All the components that made them into who they were and why we would hire this person. Do they have the proper clay to work at this facility? Always make connections from past experiences to current work. Your previous jobs, even if they were really crappy, they'll be really helpful for you in your current job. You have to be able to bring that forward. Those earlier jobs are the ones that you're going to learn at. You're going to learn the bad things about yourself. You'll also learn the good things about yourself. And then build off of your past successes. And try to evaluate your deficiencies and build on those, okay? It's the only time you're going to be able to do that before you start getting into a job that is more relevant to what you originally wanted to do. Now, one of the things when I came on, we had a little office, about 700 square feet of space. And I remember my boss came in and he said, well, you know what, this is a Piedmont Triad area. If you just sit at your desk and do nothing, it's going to develop on its own. So see if you can come up with some ideas. Well, one of the things I started seeing around the state is that there was no real good support for analytical training, like the hands-on skill component, right? The colleges had some programs in place. A lot of them were theory-based. They had some equipment. The newest piece is maybe 8 years old. And I thought, well, the university system must have a lot nicer pieces of equipment. Well, they didn't, right? I thought it would be very interesting to set up a lab and have it as a training facility. I asked the questions, and the questions were, do we have money to do this? The answer was no. So I went back to what I used to do. You find money in other ways. You look for grants, you look for support. We established that there was need probably in 2008, and we learned how the community college system worked. We learned how the financial departments worked, marketing and purchasing, which is a feat. So we put those funds in place, and we established partnerships, and we signed our lease. We moved into that facility, which is in the Richard Dean building downtown, on July 6, 2009. This was the original, this is what I went to my boss with. Now, probably not the smartest thing in the world. I was drawing it in a parking lot as I was waiting for a meeting, right? The idea was good. His first comment was, you didn't have a ruler with you. Okay, I didn't. But, very simple. I mean, it was my first try. So we started looking, how do we make it more presentable, right? Set up a CAD drawing, laid it out. Does it fit in the space that we were looking at? Now, over to, I guess it'd be your right, is an 1,800 square foot lab space. It currently holds about $1.4 million worth of analytical equipment, all accessible to the students of the community college system. You can actually get training on that equipment for free. You talk to Debbie Pritchard, you talk to Kevin Connolly, they will set you up, right? This is, right now, probably one of the most advanced analytical training facilities in the US, according to Waters, right? One of the problems we were having was we were getting probably about a 1 hour drive away from our facility draw to that area. And when we were looking at training industry, they were sending maybe 1 or 2 people. They wouldn't send their whole crew. So we started looking at ways of moving this around. We had a company that moved into Greensboro called Ameritox, and one of their press releases, they said, one of the reasons we moved to this area was because of the proximity to the training center in Winston-Salem. I thought that was fantastic, because then I can go ask for more money to get more of these centers. It didn't work that way. I had to come up with a better idea. So we started looking at ways of moving all our programs across the state. You know, taking down the borders, taking down the walls, and moving them around. We, as you heard earlier, we have 7 centers located around the state. They are somewhat isolated, or they were somewhat isolated. We've kind of turned it into a true network, and we're moving those programs all over the state now. The problem we encountered is once we started working with some of the hands-on equipment, some of the more expensive pieces or heavier pieces, how do you move them around, right? We came up with an idea like this. Now this isn't a brand new idea that I came up with on my own. I mean, it's designed off of emergency medical treatments for areas that have dealt with a disaster. Same type of design. They make these things into hospitals, clinics, triage areas, all that kind of stuff. What we designed here was a 42-foot trailer with expandable sides that can expand to 22 feet wide. We have, down the center, we have all our equipment that we would require for the training, and we can train about 16 people in here at one time. All our courses are designed to be delivered to an industrial standard, so the courses are between 4 hours and 4 days long. Those are the type of courses that we deliver through BioNetwork. So we started putting presentations together. Okay, if we're going to sell this, we have to show people something that this is what we want. This is what we want to try to put together. It's a Volvo unit. It was the only one that was in blue. Didn't have to be Volvo. But we started putting some of these presentations together as to what things would look like. Now, this is a great feat, whether I did it or somebody else did it, within the community college system. This unit, we anticipated would cost us shy of $1 million, right? All said and done, I think our final price tag was $854, or $854,000. And part of that had to do with us doing some of the work. Part of it had to do with making sure we were getting the best costs on what we were purchasing. And the other part was just negotiating with people. No, that's way too much, right? We started talking to Mack. Mack sold us their truck for $114,000, right? The truck itself is worth about $148,000 on the market, okay? We talked to them, $148,000 is too much. So what can you do? And they said, well, what do you want to pay? 0, right? Good marketing tool for Mack. You know, give us a truck, we'll use it all around the state. All the kids will see that little Mack emblem and the dog on the hood. It'd be perfect for you guys. And they said, how about $114,000? I said, okay. So once we started working through the bid process, we knew we were moving forward with it. We started looking at a design for the unit. Started looking at some graphics, and we wanted to really stand out. When this thing moved around the state, we wanted to make sure people knew that it was us and that we were there and that we were training people. And really, if you look at it fundamentally, this is really your guys' trailer. So it's kind of nice for you guys to see where your trailer is, right? It arrived here on May 29th, and SciTech actually received 2 phone calls on its way here. It was delivered from Oregon. So the trailer itself was all wrapped, and it came across the US, and it was dropped here. Because it was a piece of equipment at the time it arrived, after it came off of the deliverer's truck, we had no insurance on the unit, so we had to find a place to put it inside a building on SciTech's property. Now, the only place it would fit is the Piedmont building. Some of you might be aware of it. It's a building that they're going to be tearing down. We fit that truck in there. Now, what you see in the photos here is the one in the lower corner on the left. It's actually just a nice picture of when we had it in the parking lot at SciTech. The truck you see on top with the white stripe is that when they were wrapping the tractor, because we purchased a tractor here and they wrapped it here. The Army vehicle that you see there, the driver from Oregon was not able to make that hairpin turn going into, because they had to back it into the Piedmont building. He tried, I believe, 3 or 4 times, and it's not going to happen. So, for lack of better terminology, we called in the Army. A gentleman by the name of Jason, who works in purchasing, knew somebody over at the armory across the way. Asked them if they could come over and help us put this trailer back into the Piedmont building. They brought over this unit and literally scared me when they tried to hook it up. This particular unit is about 18 inches higher than a typical tractor. So they really had to bump the trailer up to actually get it hooked up. The really nice thing about it is they looked at it, they said, yeah, we can do it, and yes, we can help you. They hooked it up, backed it up once straight into the building, right? Yeah, they didn't even pull forward. It was a full circle. It was beautiful. So now we're looking at ways of doing things differently. Just to go back a bit, the bid on that went out on February 26th, I believe, or February 2nd. And we had that thing on site May 29th. Now, for the community college system or a state system, that whole bid process to delivery, now they had to build this thing. We actually bought a Great Dane trailer, empty semi-truck trailer. All that customization that was done on it for opening up the sides, they're all hydraulic. That all took time. So between those 2 periods, that's amazing that we could have gotten that thing in that period of time. We had a good project manager on that. So thanks, Maya. Now, we're looking at potentially doing more of this. There's a program that the FDA put in, it's about 2 years old now, about the qualification of employees who work in aseptic facilities. So if you work in an aseptic area on a regular basis, you get qualified on a regular basis. If you work in an aseptic area on a non-routine basis, you are required to be qualified on a regular basis. Companies don't want to do the qualifications on their site in their own facilities because it can compromise their operations. So they look at setting up separate facilities. Some of the facilities that companies have set up separately, they later turn around and use them for manufacturing because it's space and it's usable. We're looking at potentially setting up a second trailer for aseptic handling and aseptic training. So a program that operates out of our capstone center on NC State's Centennial campus will then become portable. Now, we do have a couple of programs that still are not portable, but that one going portable, I think, is going to be one of our biggest feats, right? And then we're looking at a third unit to replace our existing outreach bus that we have that's located at the capstone center. Our outreach bus will soon be wrapped in the same type of graphics that you see on the truck. So everything will look consistent. The outreach bus would probably be about 4 or 5 years away. So we're not even thinking of what it's going to look like inside. But I can tell you that NASA has a really nice outreach trailer. And the whole inside of that trailer is all LCD screens. Ceilings, walls, and floors. You can walk in it. It's for kids, but you can walk in there. You can sit on the floor and they put a program in there and you're out in space, right? And it runs through a sequence. It'll tell you all about space or tell you all about different ways of doing things. But it puts you right in there. It's almost like a simulator. It's kind of nice. I'm not saying we're going to do that, because it's probably very expensive. But in 5 years' time, it might be very cheap. Now we're looking at expanding our capabilities and make delivery of courses flexible throughout the state. I mentioned that earlier. One of the flexibilities that BioNetwork has, we have right now 3 centers that operate out of SciTech. We have our Biobusiness Center out in Asheville that is populated with 5 SciTech employees. We have the National Center here that has 3 permanent employees and 1 or 2 part-time. And then we have our Pharma Center in the Piedmont Triad Research Park that currently has 4, but soon to have more, right? One of the things with these is to provide equal opportunity through the whole state of North Carolina. One of the things that I was seeing was that there was a lot of advantages and benefits for people who lived and operated in an urban area. We're trying to make sure that the rural areas in North Carolina, which are more than the urban ones, are able to get the same benefits from the programs that we're putting together. So by doing some of this, we're able to do that. Working with a great program, conceptually developed in 2002, 2003. This is BioNetwork, right? Is basically focused on biotechnology, pharmaceutical, and agriculture. The program expansion through statewide delivery of programs. This is relatively recent. I started doing this probably in 2008. Got a lot of headaches and a lot of grief from other BioNetwork centers. So what are you doing in my area? What do you do in my region, right? And then also, we've just recently submitted a request for increasing our funding for our next fiscal year. That increase in funding is going to be about $900,000. And part of it is to support the food industry that we're starting to support, but it's difficult for us to continue to kind of spread ourselves out without seeing some of the thinness that starts to present itself. This last one right here, I hope you guys are taking note of it. This one here, why it bounces around like that, is for you guys to realize that this is one of those opportunities to grab hold of. The courses that we offer at the Pharma Center, once you graduate from SciTech, you start working in industry, you can take those courses. You can take them for about $1,995 a piece. And you have to travel to Milford, Massachusetts, or another location that they may be delivering them. So if you take it on your own here, I think our courses are anywhere from $75 to $185. But because you're associated with the community college, and we're part of the community college system, you talk to your instructor, you get that course for free. And I really encourage you that when you develop your first resume or CV when you get out of your 2-year program, you need to put that on there. And I'll tell you why in a minute. For the enrollment, this will give you an understanding of where we were and where we've come to be. If you see on the earlier side there, I think our first year we hit somewhere around 600 people. The Capstone Center, I think, was our predominant training center. I think they were 490 of those 600s that were trained. The first increase that you see in that graph is actually the opening of the Capstone Center at NC State Centennial Campus. So you got a lot of publicity around that. Everybody was like, oh, what is this all about? Need to get some training there. You had a really good increase in there, and it tapered off. The gentleman who was in charge of that facility indicated that the reason it tapered off is because they reached their maximum capacity. Now, at the time, I think they were saying that their maximum capacity was somewhere around 600 people to be trained within a fiscal year. We opened up our facility in Winston-Salem in the 2009 period, so that's where you see the beginning of that new increase. My boss at the time said, yeah, it's about the same increase as what the Capstone Center had. So next year, it's going to taper off, right? Because you'll have reached your capacity. Well, we didn't design it in the same way. The Capstone Center was designed under a traditional model. You build a building, you segregate it off into labs and classrooms and aseptic areas, and you provide training in it. You fill up the room, you're full, right? What we did is we have one classroom at the facility, the Pharma Center downtown, holds 25 people. Last year, the Pharma Center was probably the dominant training facility. They only have one classroom for 25 people. If you look at all the classes that were delivered, I think only a couple dozen of them that were tackled at the Pharma Center. The rest of them were done elsewhere. We didn't use the structure of the building as our limitations. We delivered at community colleges. We delivered at training centers within companies. We sent the instructors out. We sent the materials out, so we were broadening that space. This is where our numbers hit. We finished off that last year at 4,240 people, right? Now this is from an organization that was really never intended to train anybody. So to say that we've trained 4,240 people is substantial. I anticipate that our numbers will be a little bit higher this year. This is all done with about 38 people, 27 adjunct instructors. The adjunct instructors are industry-based. So they all have industrial experience, and they then use our course materials to then deliver to other industries to be able to provide them with some incumbent worker training. Our 2011 stats, our outreach component, almost 29,000 people, 29,000 people. This is middle school and high school. These are the people who, and of course, probably mostly in the rural areas, these are the individuals that probably don't get the same kind of information as, say, an urban high school or an urban middle school. So it provides them with information on alternate career choices, right? 4,200 trained, over 284 classes. This might not mean a lot to you. It's real important to me. The interaction with industry, 168 companies, right, through the state of North Carolina, all in life science based. Interaction with colleges. The state of North Carolina has the community college system that houses 58 colleges. We interacted with 39 of them, so a good percentage of it. Now here's where some of our problems lie. The first few won't look like problems. We have increases in personnel. This is from probably the second year after we had started to today, 23 to 37. It shows some expansion, shows some growth. Our centers, we moved from 6 to 7, right, with the addition of the national center that Russ is in charge of. And we're also looking at increasing that number from 7 to 8. So again, we're increasing. Trainees initially 490 to 4,240, an 8-fold increase. And this, what I just mentioned, a proposal for a new center, and also the additional assets that we'll need for that center, and for our program to be able to deliver it around the state. Here's the problem. Our decreases in budget. In the 2005-2006 timeframe, we had $7.1 million allocated to us from the General Assembly for the operation of BioNetwork in the state of North Carolina. This past year, we got $4.2 million. It's a 41% decrease, yet we've done, I can't even begin to give you an idea of how much more we've done last year compared to what we've done 5-6 years ago, but with a lot less money. Here are some industrial options. A lot of people say, okay, well, Alan's biotech program, you need to go work in biomanufacturing and bioprocessing. There's a lot of industries that actually can feed into those programs, or those other industries. So you can go work at a food industry, get all the regulatory components built into your knowledge, understand how manufacturing works and processing works. And you would become a more viable person to a biotech firm that is manufacturing vaccines or proteins or that kind of thing. This here, I won't go into too much detail, but these are some of the paths within an organization. These are relatively large organizations. From personal experience, I hope there's not too many IT people in here, but The operational path and the regulatory paths are probably the ones that are going to set you up with a very nice career. Operational paths, there's a lot of bonuses associated with salary. They're all based on performance, not only your own personal performance, but the performance of what you're responsible for. And then the regulatory path, it allows you to branch out when you're older, like me. So you don't have to go lift bags and drums of stuff. You can actually go out and tell people the proper way to do things, right? So those are the two, in my opinion, that have a lot of good value for a long-term potential career. Now, getting into the industry, it's a lot different than when I started interviewing at companies. The difference between small and big companies right now, if you send your resume into, as an example, the Merck vaccine facility in Durham, there is no person that is going to look at your resume until you get an interview. All the evaluation of your resume is done electronically. They're looking for keywords in there. So if they post something and you apply for it, there are certain keywords in your resume that they're going to look for to be able to say this person has a potential. So when I say you put, like if you take an HPLC class at the Pharma Center, put on there, I've taken hands-on skill development with HPLC. HPLC will be picked up depending on the type of job. Okay? If you don't put it on there, they won't call you. With the smaller companies, this is where some of the experience growth is good. You can get into a smaller company, you can actually phone the HR person, say, yeah, I'm looking for a job, here's my qualifications. They'll tell you where to mail the letter or PDF it, right? They will get it and they'll look at it and they'll put it in an appropriate pile. You get a job there, all of a sudden you're starting to build experience. You go apply at Merck and their electronic system is going, oh, he's got experience, right? So both of these are valuable, but I don't particularly like these electronic monitoring systems for resumes because it does nothing on the character and attitude of the individual, right? And just because maybe you don't write your resume properly, I don't see that as the only reason why you shouldn't get the job. Who you know doesn't really work anymore, especially in these big companies, with respect to these electronic devices that are used for resume and CV evaluation. A lot of times you'll phone up somebody, you'll be given a name, yeah, call this person, they'll be able to help you. Typically what they do is they'll give you the website for their company. Hit HR and apply online because they have no mechanism of getting that resume to somebody. In the past, what would happen is somebody would say, phone me up and say, I was given your name, is there any way you can help me with the resume? And I'm like, sure, send it my way. It'd come my way, I'll look at it, it's a QC one, I'll give it to the QC manager. Do you want to have a look at this? If it's good, they go talk to HR, they bring that person in. That doesn't happen a lot anymore, not on the bigger companies. Analogous Industries, this is something I was mentioning earlier. You can work your way into a target industry. If an industry, a particular industry that you're really interested in, say vaccines, right? We've got Novartis, we've got Merck, we've got BD Medical, we've got Medicago. They're all operating right now in North Carolina. All great companies. It might be hard to get your foot in the door there, but there's other companies that you can work for. I mentioned food earlier. Cosmetics are good. They work under the same regulations as a pharmaceutical company does. Processing is similar. You'll at least get an understanding of manufacturing processing that you can actually move from one to the other. Salary, I've always been of this impression. You're going to get a lot more from your first and second job than your employer will. They will provide you with training, even if it's just a matter of working in an environment that is giving you some skills, right? Salary's not as important on those first couple of jobs. That's my opinion. Opportunities. Take advantage of training opportunities. I've offered you guys one today. When you go and work for companies, a lot of times what will happen is they'll say, well, is anybody interested in getting this training on this new piece of equipment so that then you can come back and train some of the other people? Sounds like a lot of work. You'll be the one that benefits the most from it. Okay. Cross-training in other departments. Put in there when offered. You don't want to go button in some other department and say, well, I'm here to help you. If you haven't been directed that way, if you haven't been sent that way, it's usually more problems than anything else. And then know when to leave, right? A lot of resumes today have people that stay at a company for a year, stay at a company for 6 months, and then move on. You have to make that decision of when to go. If you're not happy with your job, it's probably time to leave, right? There's no point in staying there and making your life miserable, because if you don't leave, your boss or your company will probably eventually say, you know, it's not working out. My last slide, I'm almost done. Path to success career is never a straight road. You got to stop once in a while and then look around, see what options are there for you. If somebody had asked me when I was in high school or in junior college or community college equivalent, what I was going to do when I was this age, I would have never guessed this. I probably would have never even guessed the process development side. You know, I probably would have guessed, well, my goal was to be a veterinarian, right? The only reason I didn't become a veterinarian is because it was about 8 hours away from where my parents lived. It was too far, right? So I chose chemistry. I chose chemistry as an analogous program. You know, maybe eventually I get into vet school, but never did. Got a job, and then worked out. This is my career, right? So keep that in mind. Always evaluate what you're doing. Opportunities are yours. Take advantage of them. And by combining the right pieces, building blocks for a successful career. So these are my thoughts. And, you know, I think I'm at the age right now that I don't have to think about molecules. I don't have to think about reactions and how to keep cells alive and stuff like that. I can think about these things because this is where I'm going, right? You guys need to think about all those other things. So I think Russ is going to field some questions if you have any. And I want to thank everybody for showing up and listening to me for the past 25 minutes.